Welcome to Dreamscribe, your companion on the journey to peaceful sleep. Before you drift off, don't forget to like and subscribe. It helps this calming community grow. Where in the world are you tuning in from? The RV rumbled down the desolate highway, its headlights carving a narrow path through the approaching twilight. Inside, the hum of the tires on asphalt blended with the occasional bursts of laughter from the four passengers, adventurers chasing the unknown. Jake, the group's leader, kept one hand on the wheel and the other on his phone, checking the latest weather reports. "We're close," he muttered, eyes scanning the horizon. This stretch of road had the last reported sighting. Emily, seated beside him, sighed. "You really think we're going to find anything? I mean, it's just fog." "It's not just fog," Mia interjected from the back, her eyes gleaming with excitement. "People have disappeared in this area, Emily. Whole cars found abandoned, doors wide open, engines running, but no sign of the drivers." Ryan, the group's tech expert, glanced up from his thermal camera. "And the weirdest part, no bodies, no tracks leading away, like they just stepped into nothing." Emily scoffed but didn't argue. The reports were strange, and deep down, she hated how uneasy they made her feel. The sun had nearly set by the time the RV reached the marked location. Jake slowed the vehicle to a crawl. The road signs were faded, barely legible, as if they had been left to rot under decades of neglect. Then they saw it. A wall of thick, white fog rolled across the road ahead, its edges unnaturally defined. It wasn't drifting like normal fog, it was waiting. The conversation died. Jake tightened his grip on the wheel. "That's not normal." Mia leaned forward. "Guys, tell me that doesn't look alive." Emily's stomach twisted. "Maybe we should." The RV lurched as something slammed against the side. Ryan swore, nearly dropping the camera. "What the hell was that?" Silence. Jake's foot hovered over the gas pedal, but the road ahead was completely consumed by the fog now, a solid mass stretching in every direction. Mia grabbed her camera. "We need to get footage of this." "Are you insane?" Emily snapped. "Something just hit us." "I know," Mia whispered. "That means something's out there." Jake took a deep breath and nudged the RV forward. The tires crunched over the gravel road as the vehicle crossed into the fog. Instantly, the world changed. The headlights barely cut a few feet ahead, swallowed almost immediately by the dense white mass. The warm hues of sunset vanished, replaced by a cold, suffocating gray. The outside world ceased to exist. Then came the silence. The hum of insects, the rustling of leaves, the distant call of birds, all of it was gone. The only sound was the RV's engine, a mechanical heartbeat in the void. Ryan turned to the others, his voice hushed. "I don't like this." Emily wrapped her arms around herself. "Maybe it's just a low-pressure system messing with the sound." Mia whispered, "Then why does it feel like something's listening?" Jake kept driving at a crawl, his eyes locked on the empty road ahead. The GPS flickered, then died, the screen turning to static. "Lost service," Ryan muttered. "No signal, no map." A loud thump echoed from the roof of the RV. Everyone froze. Emily's breathing hitched. "Tell me that was just a tree branch." Jake didn't answer. His grip on the wheel was iron tight. The fog thickened, pressing against the windows like something tangible. Shadows flickered just beyond the glass, tall, impossibly thin figures. Mia gasped. "Did you see that?" Ryan grabbed his camera and aimed it at the windshield. Through the lens, he saw them more clearly. Silhouettes, dozens of them, motionless, watching. Then, just as suddenly as they had appeared, the shadows vanished. Ryan lowered the camera, his voice unsteady. "Guys, I don't think we're alone." Jake sped up, his instincts screaming at him to get the hell out of there. But the road, it wasn't right. "We should have hit a turn by now," Emily said, gripping the edge of her seat. "But it's just straight." "It's looping," Jake realized, a cold sweat breaking out on his neck. "We're driving in circles." Mia turned to the side window, peering through the fog. Her heart nearly stopped. "Jake," she whispered, "stop the RV." "What?" "No way. Stop the RV." He slammed on the brakes. The fog outside the window shifted, pulling away just enough to reveal a second RV, parked just a few feet away. Identical. Same model. Same color. And through the fogged-up windshield, Mia saw themselves. Sitting inside, staring back. Their reflections weren't moving. Emily's voice barely came out. "What the hell is happening?" The fog rushed in again, swallowing the doppelganger RV whole. Ryan fumbled with his camera, shaking. "We have to go. We have to go right now." Jake threw the RV into reverse, tires screeching as he backed away. But the moment he did, the fog around them thickened, locking them in place. And then, from somewhere deep within the fog, they heard it, a sound that made their blood run cold. A low, rasping breath, and then a voice. "Why did you come?" The whisper came from everywhere at once. Ryan clutched his camera like a lifeline. "Did you guys hear?" The RV rocked violently, nearly tipping onto two wheels. Something was clawing at the roof. Emily screamed. "It's on top of us!" Jake hit the gas, but the wheels spun uselessly. The fog had turned into something thicker, something solid. They were trapped. Mia reached for the emergency exit, but Jake grabbed her wrist. "No! If you go out there, you won't come back." Another thump, this time against the side window. A shape pressed against the glass. A hand. Not human. Too many fingers. The palm slid down the window, leaving behind a streak of something black and viscous. The breathing grew louder. Emily covered her ears. "Make it stop." Then, just outside the RV, something whispered her name. Jake's voice was barely audible. "We need to find a way out. Now." Ryan scrolled through the past footage on his camera, hands shaking. "Guys," he muttered, dread filling his tone. "Look at this." The others crowded around the screen. The last frame showed themselves, sitting inside the RV. But something else was in there with them. Behind Emily's seat, barely visible in the darkness, was a figure. Watching. Waiting. And then, on the camera's audio, a voice whispered a final, chilling warning. "Let us in." The dense fog wrapped around the RV like an unrelenting grip, muting the outside world into a void of shifting gray. What had once been a lively road trip had turned into a nightmarish limbo where time and distance lost meaning. The headlights barely cut a few feet ahead before being swallowed whole, and the road behind them had long since disappeared. It was as if they were drifting through an endless, formless sea, completely untethered from reality. Inside the RV, the air was thick with tension. The hum of the engine was the only consistent sound, a stark contrast to the eerie silence pressing in from the outside. Even their voices felt wrong here, too loud, too intrusive. It was like speaking in a cathedral where something unseen might shush them at any moment. Emily sat with her arms crossed, staring out the window into the blank nothingness. "I swear the fog's getting thicker," she murmured. "Like it's closing in." Mia swallowed, the glow of the dashboard casting deep shadows across her face. "Doesn't fog usually roll in and out?" she asked, more to herself than anyone else. This feels like it's staying." Ryan adjusted the settings on his thermal camera, but the screen showed nothing, just an empty wall of static and distortions. "I can't get a clear reading," he muttered, frustration evident in his tone. "It's like the fog's blocking the infrared. That shouldn't be possible." Jake tightened his grip on the wheel. He was supposed to be the leader, the one who kept things under control, but this was something far beyond his understanding. "Keep looking," he said, his voice steady despite the unease creeping up his spine. "If we can figure out what's causing this, maybe we can find a way out." The deeper they drove, the more the fog felt alive. It wasn't just that it obscured their vision. It moved with them, shifting and swirling unnaturally, always there, always watching. At times, shadows flickered just beyond the edge of visibility, vague and shifting, vanishing when looked at directly. The occasional thump against the RV's exterior made them jump, but every time they peered outside, there was nothing there. Emily checked her phone for the 100th time. No service. Still. Ryan scoffed, tapping his useless GPS. "We could be 5 minutes from a main road or stranded in another dimension, and we wouldn't know the difference." "Stop saying things like that," Mia snapped, rubbing her arms. "You're freaking me out." Jake inhaled sharply, eyes scanning ahead. "Something's up there." The others followed his gaze to where the fog seemed denser, more solid, like a wall had formed in the middle of the road. As they got closer, their headlights revealed something even worse. A row of abandoned cars. Jake slowed the RV to a crawl, his heart hammering. The vehicles ahead were covered in a thin sheen of moisture, their windows fogged over from the inside. Some had doors hanging open. Others sat eerily untouched, as if their drivers had just vanished mid-journey. Emily ran a hand through her hair. "What the hell happened here?" Ryan raised his camera, filming the scene. "This is bad. This is really bad." Mia pressed her face to the glass, eyes scanning the empty cars. "Where are the people?" Silence. Then, tap, tap. A slow, deliberate tapping sound echoed through the RV from above. Something was on the roof. They froze. Jake's fingers hovered over the ignition, but his instincts screamed at him not to move, not to breathe. Tap, tap. The sound moved, creeping toward the back of the vehicle. Emily clamped a hand over her mouth to stifle a gasp. Ryan aimed the thermal camera at the ceiling, but the screen glitched, spitting out erratic distortions. Then, from outside, a whisper drifted through the fog. "You shouldn't be here." Mia's hands trembled. "Oh my God!" Jake's decision was made in an instant. "We're getting out of here." He floored the gas pedal, sending the RV lurching forward. The vehicle tore through the fog, swerving past the abandoned cars, its tires screeching against the damp asphalt. For a brief, hopeful second, the road ahead looked clear. But then, without warning, the fog thickened again, slamming into the windshield like a tidal wave. And just like that, the world vanished. When the RV came to a stop, the silence was absolute. No wind. No distant hum of insects. Nothing. Ryan exhaled shakily, his voice barely above a whisper. "Tell me we're still on the road." Jake's hands were trembling on the wheel. "I don't know." The fog outside was absolute, smothering them in a blank void. Even with the headlights on, they couldn't see more than a few feet in any direction. The GPS was dead. The clocks on the dashboard blinked midnight over and over again. Emily clutched Mia's arm. "We have to do something." Mia swallowed hard. "Like what?" "We can't even see where we are." Then, something new appeared in the fog. Shapes. Tall, thin figures standing motionless in the distance. They weren't moving. Not yet, but they were closer than before. A deep, resonant vibration thrummed through the air, making their ears pop. The figures didn't advance, but they didn't retreat either. They just stood there, watching. Jake whispered, "Lock the doors." Emily was already ahead of him, clicking the locks into place. Ryan clutched his camera like a lifeline, still recording, as if that would somehow make this real, prove that they weren't losing their minds. Mia's breathing grew erratic. They weren't there a second ago. A shadow passed just outside the window, then another, and another. The fog swirled as something moved through it, their forms distorted like a bad signal on an old TV screen. Then, the first knock came. Soft, polite, knuckles rapping against the RV door. Mia flinched. "Do not open it." Jake didn't move. His heart was slamming against his ribs. A second knock followed, firmer this time. Then from just beyond the windshield, something pressed against the glass. A hand, but the fingers were too long, and they were smiling. The soft knocking against the RV's door continued, steady and deliberate. Each tap sent a ripple of dread through the group, their bodies frozen in place. The fog outside churned sluggishly, moving in an unnatural rhythm, as if something within it was breathing. Jake's hand hovered over the ignition, his knuckles turning white. "No one opens that door," he whispered, his voice sharp with authority. Emily clutched her knees to her chest, staring at the shadowy figures beyond the windshield. They were closer now. Though the fog obscured their features, their outlines were undeniable, tall, elongated things that didn't move like people. Ryan's fingers fumbled over his camera, his breathing ragged. "I need to get this on video," he muttered, as if documenting the horror unfolding before them would somehow make it feel more real, more tangible. The knocking stopped. Then a new sound took its place, a slow, scraping noise against the metal walls of the RV, like fingernails dragging deliberately across the surface. Mia swallowed hard. "They're trying to get in." Jake turned the key in the ignition. The engine coughed, sputtered. Didn't start. A tense silence filled the RV, broken only by the continued scraping outside. Jake tried again. The engine groaned, but refused to turn over. "We're stuck," Emily whispered, her voice cracking. "We can't stay here." "I know that," Jake snapped, frustration laced with fear. He took a steadying breath, forcing himself to think. "Maybe if we push forward, we can roll downhill and jumpstart it." Ryan shook his head, still peering through the camera screen. "The road's gone." Jake frowned. "What?" Ryan turned the camera around so the others could see the display. The screen showed what their eyes couldn't process. The stretch of road they had driven in on had vanished into the fog, swallowed whole by the creeping white abyss. Mia pressed her hands against the window. "It's trapping us." A guttural sound rumbled from deep within the fog. A growl, inhuman, predatory. Emily's voice shook. That wasn't the wind. A disturbing discovery. Ryan pointed the thermal camera toward the fog, his hands trembling. The screen flickered, distortions running across the image. Then, shapes, moving. Glowing signatures slithered through the mist, indistinct yet clearly alive. They weren't human. Their limbs bent at unnatural angles, shifting erratically as they stalked the perimeter of the RV. Then, one of the figures turned its head. Ryan recoiled as if burned, nearly dropping the camera. "Oh God," he whispered. "It saw me." As soon as he spoke, the RV lurched. Something had slammed against the side with impossible force, sending shockwaves through the vehicle. The windows rattled. The walls groaned. Mia screamed, clutching Emily's arm. "We need to do something." Jake braced himself against the dashboard, mind racing. "We have to find a weakness," he said, forcing himself to sound calm. "They don't like fire, right?" Emily's eyes widened. "The lighter. The emergency flares." Ryan scrambled toward the cabinets, throwing open drawers until he found a pack of road flares. His fingers trembled as he pulled one out and struck the cap against the igniter. A burst of red light filled the RV. The effect was immediate. The scraping stopped. The whispers in the fog quieted. The looming figures recoiled. Mia exhaled shakily. "It's working." Jake took the flare from Ryan and opened the driver's side window just enough to toss it outside. The red glow cast eerie shadows through the swirling mist. For a moment, the fog retreated, but then something screamed. A high-pitched, keening wail that sounded like the agony of 1,000 voices merging into one. The fog surged forward again. The flare flickered and died far too quickly, its light snuffed out by the hungry mist. The moment it vanished, the figures pressed closer again, regaining their nerve. Emily grabbed Jake's arm. "It's not enough. We need more." Ryan checked his bag. "We have 3 more flares." "That's it." A deep knock echoed from the rear of the RV. Then another, and another, knuckles rapping against the metal. Emily turned toward the sound, her breath caught in her throat. "That's not random," she whispered. "It's in a pattern." A slow realization dawned on them all as they listened. The knocks weren't just knocking. They were mimicking their own heartbeat. Mia's hands trembled. "We have to get out of here." The lights inside the RV flickered. A new voice whispered from within the fog. "One of you must stay." Jake shook his head, unwilling to accept whatever bargain the fog was trying to make. "No one's staying," he said firmly. "We stick together." The fog seemed to react to his defiance. The entire RV shuddered, rocking violently from side to side. Ryan gripped the cabinets to keep from falling. "The engine. Try it again." Jake turned the key. The RV sputtered, choked, then miraculously roared to life. "Yes," Jake shouted, slamming his foot on the gas. The RV surged forward, plowing through the fog. The mist resisted, pulling at the tires, distorting the space around them, but Jake didn't stop. He kept his eyes on the road, or at least where the road should have been. The fog thinned for just a second, revealing a break in the mist. A path forward. Then came the final test. Directly ahead, standing in the middle of the road, was Jake. A perfect replica of himself, staring back at them with vacant, unblinking eyes. Mia let out a strangled cry. "Don't stop. It's not real." But the other Jake raised a hand and smiled. "Let us in," it whispered. Jake's foot slammed the pedal to the floor. The RV surged forward, straight toward the thing wearing his face. For a split second, it stood its ground, watching them come closer. Then, just as the RV should have hit it, the doppelganger dissolved into mist. A final, ear-splitting scream erupted from the fog, rattling the windows, and then the mist broke apart. The RV burst through to the other side, emerging into clear night air. Silence. Only the hum of the tires on smooth pavement remained. The fog was gone. The RV roared forward, its tires screeching against the damp asphalt as Jake kept his foot pressed to the gas pedal. The fog behind them churned, writhing like a living thing, but for the first time in hours, they could see stars above. The oppressive mist had thinned, allowing glimpses of darkened trees and winding road. "We're out," Mia gasped, her voice a mix of disbelief and relief. "We actually made it out." Jake didn't ease up. Not yet. His heart pounded, and his grip on the wheel was so tight his knuckles had gone white. Emily and Ryan sat frozen, eyes darting toward the mirrors as if expecting the fog to surge forward and reclaim them. But the road stretched ahead, clear and silent. Too silent. Then Ryan whispered, "Wait, where the hell are we?" They expected to emerge onto a highway, maybe a familiar landmark, something recognizable. Instead, the road seemed wrong. It was too smooth, the asphalt seamless and unmarked. No street signs, no mile markers, no lights. Just an endless ribbon of black pavement stretching into the horizon. The RV's headlights barely penetrated the darkness, as though the very air was resisting illumination. Mia checked her phone, no service. The GPS was still a void, the small blue dot floating over nothingness. Emily's breath hitched. Did we escape, or? Jake swallowed hard. I don't know. Mia shifted uncomfortably, rubbing her hands over her arms to chase away the lingering cold. Then, her gaze flicked to Emily and froze. Emily, she said carefully, your arm. Emily frowned, glancing down. Her sleeve was pushed up slightly, revealing something that hadn't been there before. A symbol burned into her skin. Twisting, branching lines like the veins of a dying leaf, etched in black just below her elbow. Emily yanked her sleeve down, eyes wide. What the hell is that? Mia shook her head. It looks like the markings we saw on the fog. Ryan's face paled, like the ones on the things in the fog. Emily scrubbed at her skin, as if she could erase the mark. No, this isn't real. Did something touch you? Jake asked, his voice tight. No, I don't think so. Emily's breathing grew shallow. I don't remember. Mia bit her lip. What if we didn't fully escape? The words settled over them like a death sentence. Ryan, needing answers, turned back to his camera. He scrolled through the footage he had captured in the fog, his hands trembling. The infrared had picked up shapes before, but now that they were out, maybe they could finally see what had been chasing them. He rewound to the moment just before they broke through the fog. On the screen, the mist swirled violently. The shapes inside moved erratically, dozens of them, shifting in and out of visibility. Then, just as the RV sped forward, one of the shapes latched onto the roof. Ryan's breath caught. Oh God! Jake's eyes darted to the rearview mirror. What? Ryan fast-forwarded. The shape held on. Even as the fog thinned, even as they escaped, the figure remained, a clawed hand gripping the roof's edge. Then, right before the footage cut off, the thing moved. It turned its head, and through the grainy image, it was clear. It had Emily's face. Emily made a choking sound. No, that's not possible. Ryan played the footage again. The thing on the roof wasn't just a monster. It was a perfect reflection of Emily. Same eyes, same hair, except its mouth was too wide, stretched in a silent scream. It's not me, Emily whispered. It's not me. But her voice wavered. Jake slammed the brakes, sending the RV screeching to a stop. We need to figure this out. Now. Mia was shaking. What if that thing is still here? They all turned toward Emily. She stared back at them, eyes filled with panic. No, I'm me. Jake didn't respond. Ryan's fingers hovered over the camera. What if we never escaped at all? The wind outside shifted, carrying a low, almost human sigh. Then came a sound they all recognized. A knock. Slow. Measured. Coming from inside the RV. Mia whimpered. It's here. Jake turned sharply, eyes scanning every shadowed corner of the vehicle. There was nothing out of place. No intruders. No shifting shapes. Then Emily gasped and pointed. The bathroom door was shut. It had been open a moment ago. A second knock. Ryan raised the camera. We need to open it. Emily shook her head furiously. Are you insane? But Jake was already reaching for the handle. A pause. A heartbeat of silence. Then he yanked it open. Inside the small, darkened bathroom, the mirror was fogged up. No one stood inside. But as they stared, letters began forming in the condensation. One by one, words appeared, as if traced by an invisible hand. You never left. The fog outside the RV surged forward again, swallowing the road, the trees, the sky. The headlights flickered. The symbols on Emily's arm burned. And then, from the mirror, a voice spoke. Emily's voice. You should have stayed. The lights in the RV went out, and the screaming began. The RV plunged into darkness, swallowed whole by the void. The headlights flickered erratically, casting jagged shadows that twisted along the walls. The mirror in the bathroom continued to fog and clear, as if something unseen was breathing against the glass. Emily's voice, her other voice, whispered from the condensation. You should have stayed. Then the screaming began. Emily clutched her head as her own voice echoed from inside the RV. It wasn't just coming from her mouth. It was in the walls, in the vents, reverberating through the metal frame of the vehicle, like a living entity trying to claw its way free. Ryan grabbed his camera, but the screen was a mess of static and distortions, black shapes flickering in and out of existence. The only thing visible was Emily's reflection, but it wasn't mimicking her anymore. The reflection tilted its head, smiling wide, too wide. Then it stepped forward. Emily gasped, stumbling backward, but there was nowhere to go. Her own reflection was crawling out of the mirror, stretching into the real world, its limbs moving like liquid shadow. Get out! Jake roared, grabbing Emily's arm and yanking her away just as the mirror shattered outward, shards flying across the tiny space. But the reflection didn't vanish. It lingered, its half-formed body still moving in the glass shards littering the floor. Hundreds of tiny versions of Emily's twisted doppelganger staring up at them. Ryan frantically flipped through his footage, trying to make sense of it all. This isn't real. This isn't real. Mia grabbed his arm, her voice deadly serious. It doesn't matter if it's real. We need to move. Now. The RV lurched violently, throwing them to the floor. A deafening metallic screech rang out as something massive scraped across the roof, like claws raking deep grooves into the vehicle's shell. Jake scrambled to the driver's seat, turning the ignition. The engine sputtered, coughed, and finally roared to life. He slammed his foot down on the accelerator, sending the RV skidding forward into the dense fog. But the fog didn't part. It thickened. Shapes writhed within it, moving alongside the vehicle, keeping pace within human speed. The figures didn't run. They glided, limbs barely moving, their faces blank voids of shadow. Mia clutched the dashboard, eyes wide. We're not escaping. We're still in it. Emily was shaking, clutching her arm where the blackened symbol had burned into her skin. They won't let us leave. Ryan twisted around, aiming the camera toward the back window. His breath hitched. Jake, they're inside. Jake risked a glance in the rearview mirror and felt his blood run cold. There were more people in the RV now. Figures stood in the aisle, motionless. Some were missing faces. Others had too many. Their elongated hands pressed against the walls, fingers stretching, curling unnaturally. They didn't make a sound. They simply stood, watching. One of them took a step forward. The air inside the RV dropped to freezing, their breath coming out in foggy gasps. The walls groaned as if under immense pressure. Ryan swung the camera around, his hands trembling. We have to do something. Before he could finish, the nearest figure lunged at him. Ryan let out a strangled scream as the shadow wrapped impossibly long fingers around his throat. The force sent them both crashing into the kitchenette. Mia grabbed the nearest object, a cast iron pan, and swung it hard. The figure shattered like brittle glass, dispersing into smoke. But more were moving now. Emily pressed against the wall, her pulse hammering. Jake, drive faster. I'm trying. Jake yelled, gripping the wheel as the fog tightened around them. The road was disappearing beneath the mist, the lines warping and shifting as if reality itself was unraveling. Then the road ended. Jake slammed on the brakes. The RV skidded, tires screeching against pavement before stopping inches from the edge of a sheer drop. Beyond it, nothing. A vast, endless void stretched before them, swirling black and gray, an abyss that had no bottom, no sky, just empty nothingness. Mia's voice trembled. Where the hell is the road? Ryan pulled himself up, panting, his face pale. We're at the end. Emily turned slowly, her heart in her throat. Then what do we do now? From behind them, the whispers grew deafening. Jake turned just in time to see the figures swarming forward. No longer standing still, they rushed toward the RV, their mouths opening in soundless screams. And leading them was Emily's doppelganger. It grinned, mirroring her every movement. Then it spoke. Only one of you gets to leave. The RV rocked violently, metal creaking under the force of the approaching shadows. The air was thick with static, an electrical charge building like an oncoming storm. Jake looked at Emily, then at the symbol burned into her arm. It's you, he said, his voice raw. They want you. Emily's eyes filled with terror. No, no, please. The doppelganger tilted its head, mocking her fear. One must stay. The temperature plummeted, ice crawling along the windows. The shadows closed in, fingers reaching. Mia grabbed Emily's hands, her voice breaking. We don't have a choice. Tears streamed down Emily's face as the truth crushed her. They hadn't escaped. The fog had never let them go. She turned, her body shaking, and stepped toward the edge of the abyss. I won't let you take them, she whispered. The doppelganger smiled. As Emily took her final step into the void, the fog exploded outward, the figures shrieking, their forms disintegrating into nothingness. Jake and the others felt themselves falling. Then, everything went black. The next thing Jake heard was the soft hum of an engine. His eyes snapped open. They were in the RV, driving. The fog was gone. The sun was rising, golden light spilling across an empty highway. Mia stirred beside him. Ryan groaned from the back. But Emily, she was gone. Only the mark on her seat remained, a faint blackened outline, as if she had never been there at all. As they drove in silence, the radio crackled. A faint, familiar voice drifted through the static. Emily's voice. You should have stayed. The highway stretched endlessly ahead, bathed in the golden light of dawn. The RV rumbled forward, the hum of the engine the only sound cutting through the aching silence. Emily was gone. Jake's hands gripped the steering wheel so tightly his knuckles had gone white. Mia sat in the passenger seat, staring blankly out the window, her face pale and drawn. Ryan sat in the back, his camera clutched to his chest like a lifeline. None of them spoke. None of them could. The last thing they remembered was falling. Now the fog was gone. The road ahead looked normal. But nothing felt normal. Jake swallowed hard, his voice hoarse when he finally spoke. "Does anyone remember?" Mia turned, her eyes hollow. "We were in the fog." "Emily," she trailed off, her voice cracking. Ryan didn't look up. "She sacrificed herself," he murmured. "She knew it wanted her." Silence filled the RV again, heavy and suffocating. Jake finally exhaled, the sound shaky. "We made it." Mia's gaze snapped to him, her expression unreadable. "Did we?" As they drove, they searched for any sign of the world they left behind. A gas station, a road sign, a passing car. Anything to prove that reality was still intact. But the road remained eerily empty. Mia checked her phone. Still no service. Ryan tried the radio. Static. Just static. "Maybe it's just this stretch of road," Jake offered weakly, but even he didn't believe it. Mia turned to Ryan. "Check the footage." Ryan hesitated before pressing play on his camera's screen. The video showed the fog closing in, the shadows surrounding them. Then Emily's doppelganger, grinning as she whispered, "One must stay." Then came the fall. And then nothing. The footage cut straight to them driving, as if everything in between had been erased. Ryan's grip on the camera tightened. "This doesn't make sense." Mia turned back toward the window, her fingers digging into the seat. None of this makes sun hours pass. The sun climbed higher, casting sharp shadows across the empty highway. But something was off. The scenery never changed. The same stretch of trees, the same cracked asphalt. No exits. No signs. Jake's stomach twisted. We should have hit a town by now. Mia checked the map on her phone. It wouldn't load. Ryan's breathing grew shallow. "Guys, what if we didn't escape?" Jake shook his head, gripping the wheel tighter. No, we got out. We saw the sky. We saw the sun." Mia whispered, "Did we?" Ryan played back the video again, scanning frame by frame. Then he froze. Mia noticed his hands trembling. "What is it?" Ryan turned the screen toward them, his face drained of color. In the reflection of the RV's rear window, Emily was sitting in the back seat. "Essie." Mia's breath hitched. "That's not possible." Ryan scrubbed through the footage again. There she was, Emily, sitting silently, staring straight ahead. Jake risked a glance in the rearview mirror, his heart hammering. "Nothing. Maybe it's just," he started, but Mia cut him off. "Look again." Jake's fingers gripped the mirror, angling it slightly. His stomach dropped. Emily was there, but her reflection wasn't moving. Ryan clutched his camera like a vice. "I don't like this." Mia turned slowly in her seat, her body rigid. Emily wasn't there. Not physically, but she was in the mirror, watching, smiling. A low hum filled the air. The RV shuddered. Jake gritted his teeth. "Hold on." The radio crackled to life. Through the static, a voice cut through. Emily's voice. "You should have stayed." The RV veered violently to the side as the fog rushed in from nowhere, swallowing the road. The golden sunlight was gone, replaced by suffocating gray nothingness. Mia screamed. "No! We were out!" The fog churned, swirling faster. The temperature plummeted. Ryan clutched his head. "It was a trick. We never left." The figures reappeared. Dozens of them. Motionless in the fog, their hollow eyes locked onto the RV. And standing among them, Emily. Not the Emily they had known. Something else. She stepped forward, her face wrong, her features slightly blurred, like a distorted photograph. The static in the radio grew louder. "One must stay." Jake slammed on the gas, but the RV wasn't moving. Mia grabbed his arm. "We have to break the loop." Jake's hands shook. "How?" Ryan, wide-eyed, suddenly turned to Mia. "She sacrificed herself once." Mia's voice was barely a whisper. "Maybe she needs to do it again." Emily's voice drifted through the fog. "You brought me back." Jake, Mia, and Ryan turned to the rear of the RV. Emily stood just inside the doorway now, smiling that too-wide smile. The symbol on Mia's arm burned. Mia's eyes filled with realization. "It wasn't just Emily," she whispered. "It marked me too." Jake's throat tightened. "Mia, don't." But she was already moving. She turned toward Emily's ghostly form. If I go, you let them leave. Emily tilted her head, considering. Then she nodded. The RV shook violently, the fog closing in. Mia turned back, offering one last, broken smile. Make it count. Then she stepped into the mist. The moment she disappeared, the fog exploded outward. And just like that, it was morning. Jake and Ryan sat in stunned silence as the RV rolled down a now familiar road. The sky was clear. The world was normal. But there were only two of them now. Ryan swallowed hard. Did we really make it out? Jake couldn't answer. He stared at Mia's empty seat, the faint outline of something burned into the fabric. Ryan exhaled shakily and raised his camera. The footage would tell them the truth. He hit play. Static. Then, a single frame of Mia's face. She was smiling. And just before the video cut off, her lips moved. You should have stayed. The fog was gone. But was it ever really gone?